coincide with the start of MLB's opening day, I present my third annual MLB opening day show, breaking up my run of Seattle Rainier players and local coaches for this special occasion. But I have 7 more Rainier shows coming up, with 4 of them being coaches. Today's show does stay with my theme on home run episodes, and lately, just by chance, brothers. So let's go. This player appeared in 2 MLB opening day games during his career. The first, he came into the game late. The second, he was a starter. He is one of 3 brothers who hail from San Francisco, where they've been playing baseball since February 1860. For those of you that don't know your U.S. history, that's before our Civil War. These brothers played at Mission High School and for their American Legion team, Recon Hill. That right there should tell you it's not the DiMaggio brothers. Good guess, wrong side of the city. I'm talking about the Baxes brothers. 2 made it to the majors. Older brother Jim, who is actually the biggest of the 3 brothers, and Mike, who would make it to the majors first. Both were named California High School Baseball Player of the Year, Jim in 1946 and Mike in 1948. And a few years before the Baxes brothers, a San Diego teenager named Ted Williams won the award. A few years after that, Oakland's Ricky Henderson. Getting back to the Baxes brothers on their side of the San Francisco Bay, an older brother Jim is playing in the 1946 San Francisco Examiner All-Star Tournament, attended by 2 local scouts who grew up in the area, Hall of Famer Tony Lazzeri and Willie Cam, master of the hidden ball trick. Question: who was the first player in MLB history to be contracted from the minors for $100,000? Answer: Willie Cam in 1922. That's what the White Sox paid the Seals. The 2 men were scouting Jim, but noticed the play of 15-year-old Mike. Even 100 years ago, give or take a day, there were many San Francisco baseball heroes for kids to look up to, usually gravitating towards players who attended their local school. At Mission High School, the Baxes had quite a few alumni they could emulate, like Hall of Famer Joe Cronin, or Lou Gehrig's replacement Babe Dahlgren, or Wally Berger, who played in the first MLB All-Star game. Maybe your Uncle Frank took you to a Seals game and you saw the flashy play of Eddie Joost or Walt Judnich. But if you're a little Italian kid attending Mission High, then unfortunately for you, you're going to the wrong school and wish you lived on the other side of town, in the Italian section, attending Galileo High School, where your list of players to choose from would sound like this: Tony Lazzeri, Frank Crosetti, George Puccinelli, Dario Lodigiani, Italo Cellini, and Marino Peretti. But the most famous Italian players from Galileo High were 3 brothers whose last name ended with an O, not an I, like every name just stated. These 3 brothers made it to the majors, and all 3 were MLB All-Stars. 2 were high school dropouts. 1 made a name for himself and is in the Hall of Fame, known everywhere by his first name and last initial. Over time, some names were made up for him, like the Yankee Clipper, Joltin' Joe, and Mr. Coffee. As a youngster, running the streets of North Beach with his brothers Vince and Dom, I bet the first thing the other kids said when they saw him was, "Here comes Joe D." I just listed some of the names from 2 schools. Add the other 10 high schools, that makes for a long list of baseball role models for kids to choose from. And the list for football and basketball stars from the city by the bay is just as long. As far as role models in the Baxes family, I'm thinking the younger Baxes boys, Mike and Andy, probably looked up to their big brother Jim when they were kids. They just wouldn't admit it. Brothers. Here's a couple of proud moments for the boys' parents. The first in 1946, when Jim was picked to represent San Francisco in the first annual Hearst Sandlot Classic and was named MVP in that inaugural game that consisted of the best players from across the country. Little brother Mike was selected for the 1948 Classic as the starting shortstop, playing with Hobie Landreth and Dick Groat. All that said, today's show is about Mike Baxes, because Dad has his autograph. But big brother Jim is part of the story. Mike Baxes went pro in 1949, and in his first 3 seasons played in 430 games, then missed all of 1952 and 1953 while serving in the military. He was stationed at Fort Ord in Monterey, California, which you are looking towards right now, and played on the Baxes team before being shipped to and then stationed in Germany, taking in the sights and playing some Army ball while waiting out his time. When he got out in 1954, the 23-year-old came straight home to play with his hometown team, the San Francisco Seals. Then, in 1955, Mike had a great season and has a nice write-up and a photo in one of Dad's Seal scorebooks. But with the Seals needing cash to stay operational, after the season, the Seals man in charge, Damon Miller, and his self-called Littlest Corporation, sold Mike, Dave Melton, and Bill Bradford to the Kansas City A's for $75,000 cash. And Mike would break into the majors on MLB's opening day, 1956, when he was put in to pinch run and got his first at-bat and stuck with the A's all season, playing musical bases with Joe DeMaestri and Hector Lopez. But Mike couldn't make it stick and was sent down to AAA for 1957, getting in 154 games with the Buffalo Bisons, who were managed by Chicago Cub legend Phil Cavarretta, who said this about Mike Baxes. "I've seen all the great ones in the National League for 20 years. Billy Jurgis, Marty Marion, Alvin Dark, and name a dozen more if you want to. But none of them made so many great plays in one night as Baxes." What did Mike do that night to deserve such praise from his manager? Well, it was on a Sunday night in August of 1957 at Buffalo Bison's Offerman Stadium. Bison's Mike Baxes hit 2 grand slams in one game, a feat never accomplished in the International League's 76-year history, as Buffalo hammered the Havana Sugar Kings 20-1. Mike drove in 10 runs, setting a 20th century Buffalo record. That 57 Bisons team had 9 players 34 years or older. The great Luke Easter was the oldest at 41 and hit 40 home runs. Former Seattle Rainier Lou Ortiz was pushing 35 and hit 22. Only 4 players were under the age of 26 on that squad. Buffalo finished last in 1956, but with the addition of Mike Baxes for 1957, they finished a half a game out of first place, with Mike leading the league in runs, hits, doubles, and then was named International League MVP. That ought to get you back into the majors, and it did. A's called him up for the start of the 1958 season, again sharing duties with Hector Lopez, with their paths crossing a few times over the years. Speaking of Hector, he was hired in 1969 as the Buffalo Bison's manager, making him the first black manager in AAA, 6 years before Frank Robinson became the first in MLB. April 1958, MLB's opening day, and just like 1956, Mike Baxes is on the lineup card, but today as the A's opening day starter at second base, facing Indians fireballer Herb Score, who was still trying to find himself after getting hit in the eye on a comebacker the season before. The two squared off in 1956 when he was a rookie and Herb was the reigning Rookie of the Year. That game, Mike got 2 walks and his first MLB hit, a double off of Herb. Back to today's game, Mike's leading off and Herb strikes him out. Next at bat, he draws a walk off Herb, and in the 7th, a hit off Indians' soon-to-be all-star Cal McClish. Hector Lopez smacks a hit, Mike scores, and the A's win on opening day, helping the same-as-usual so-so Athletics to a shutout victory over a star-studded Cleveland team. True, the Indian Stars were older, but they weren't that old. A lot of famous players on that team. And it would have been just days before this opener. My pop was in Scottsdale with his dad at spring training camp. And of the 16 players manager Bobby Bragan played on this day, Dad has 12 of their autographs and 7 of the 9 starters. There are 7 what I consider historic Indian players I have yet to profile. And since today is a day of lists, I will. Roger Maris, Larry Doby, Bobby Avila, Chico Carrasquel, Carol Hardy, Minnie Minoso, Rocky Colavito, and manager Bobby Bragan. I put these shows off because I'm more interested in the more unknown players and their struggles. Guys who never made it to the majors or maybe just a game or two and have some great stories to tell but are no longer around to tell them. Stories, some in print but no longer told. There is still some around like my dad who not only heard the stories, he was around when some of them happened and got to watch those players over the years during one of the best eras of baseball, the 1950s. And now back to the show. In June of 58, in a game where Mike had gone 4 for 4 at the plate and made some slick infield plays, he turned his ankle trying to make a double play and was out for a month. When he got back, hit poorly, lost his spot, and was on his way out of the majors for good. But not before going out with one last big league start. But like all who play pro sports, you don't know which is your last start or your last game. And you don't go into each game wondering, is this the last one? He was traded to the Yankees in April of '59, meeting up with Hector Lopez, but not for long. Yankees sent Mike to their Richmond Virginians, with the rest of his career in AAA, with a few teams including the '61 Tacoma Giants. At the end of his career, with no other teams knocking on his door, his old team, the Buffalo Bisons, did knock. Their team president said, "We owe this to Mike Baxes for all that he did for us in 1957." Referring to Mike's play that led to a spike in ticket sales, and the attendance jumped to nearly 500,000, with many of those attendees hoping to see old Luke Easter knock one out. But on a night in August of '57, they were treated to a once-in-a-lifetime moment, seeing Mike Baxes hit 2 grand slams in one game. His pro baseball career now over, Mike returned home to San Francisco for good, and just for fun played semi-pro ball with the Ellis Brooks Chevrolet team. Born in 1930 and passed away not long ago in 2023, with his wife Loretta passing first in 2018. They were married for 60 years and raised 3 boys. He played in well over 1,200 games during his 11 seasons of pro ball, with 7 seasons in the Pacific Coast League, sometimes on the same team as his big brother Jim. Mike hit 39 minor league home runs, and during his 2 MLB seasons with the A's, hit 1. 1 is better than none. So I'll wrap this up, my 3rd annual MLB Opening Day show, like I started it, talking about brothers. Mike Baxes would appear on his own Topps baseball card 2 years before his big brother Jim appeared on his. You think the little brother razzed his big brother at least a couple of times over the years about this? Or how he could rub it in and always say that he made it to the majors 3 years before Jim did? Maybe he did, but then again, Jim was a few inches taller and had a few pounds on Mike, so maybe he didn't. Brothers.